The notification glowed on my phone at 2:47 a.m. I was sleeping in the cramped back seat of my beat-up pickup truck in the Walmart parking lot when the buzz woke me. Half frozen, shivering under a threadbare blanket, I squinted at the screen through tears of exhaustion and pain. It was an email from my bank. Insufficient funds. My card had been declined for a $3.87 coffee yesterday. $3.87. That was all it took to break me that night, because 6 months ago, I had a trust fund worth $1.5 million. Now I had $417 to my name, and I was quite literally dying in my car. But before I tell you how I got here, before I tell you about the betrayal that nearly destroyed me, and before I tell you how I fought back and won, I need you to do something for me. If this story resonates with you, if you have ever felt invisible in your own family, if you have ever been used or manipulated by people who were supposed to love you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel because I share real stories about real people who refuse to stay victims. And leave a comment telling me your thoughts. Your engagement helps me reach others who need to hear that they are not alone. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I had just graduated summa cum laude with my bachelor's degree. At 22 years old, I was full of hope and dreams about the graduate program I had been accepted into at Stanford. I was driving back to my father's estate in Austin, the sprawling mansion where I had grown up, where my mother Sophia had taught me to play piano before she passed away when I was 10. My father had remarried 2 years after Mom died. Eleanor West was beautiful, poised, sophisticated. She came with a 19-year-old son named Brandon from her first marriage. A year after they married, they had a daughter together, Chloe, my half-sister, who was now 16. Dad passed away suddenly 18 months ago from a heart attack. He was only 51. In his will, he had established a trust fund, specifically for my education and future managed by Eleanor as the trustee until I turned 28. The fund was supposed to contain $1.5 million carefully invested in conservative safe funds. It was supposed to pay for my graduate school living expenses and give me a foundation to start my adult life. My father had always told me he wanted me to have choices, to never be trapped, to pursue my dreams. He made sure I knew about the trust fund, made sure I understood it was for me alone. When I pulled up to the estate that day, something felt wrong immediately. The energy was different, cold. I walked through the grand foyer with its marble floors and crystal chandelier, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. I found Eleanor in the sitting room, draped elegantly on the cream-colored sofa, flipping through Vogue magazine. She did not look up when I entered. Brandon was sprawled in the leather armchair, scrolling through his phone with that permanent smirk on his face. And Chloe was taking selfies next to something that made my blood run cold. My mother's Steinway grand piano, the instrument she had loved more than anything except me. The piano where she had taught me Chopin and Debussy, where we had laughed and cried together. It had been in the music room for as long as I could remember, a deep, rich ebony black, gleaming and pristine. Now it was painted. Bright garish bubblegum pink, and there were stickers all over it, gold letters spelling out vibes only. I stood there staring, unable to process what I was seeing. Chloe noticed me and laughed. "Oh, hey, Anya, do you love what I did to that old crusty piano? It was like totally depressing before. Now it is insta-perfect, already got 3,000 likes. She held up her phone, showing me pictures of her posing next to my mother's desecrated piano. "Vintage vibes," she squealed. I could not speak. I could not breathe. Eleanor finally looked up from her magazine, her expression utterly indifferent. "Anya, sit down. We need to discuss something." Her voice was flat, businesslike. No warmth, no welcome home, just cold efficiency. I sank onto the edge of the ottoman, my legs suddenly weak. "What is going on? What happened to Mom's piano? You cannot just—" "Your education fund." Eleanor cut me off, her eyes boring into mine. "It is gone." The room tilted. "What do you mean, gone? That is impossible. Dad left $1.5 million in a safe conservative investment fund. He showed me all the paperwork. Your father, God rest his soul, was hopelessly naive about money." Eleanor's voice was sharp now, with an edge of something that sounded almost like satisfaction. "The market has been volatile. Crypto collapsed. Some investments did not perform as expected. We tried to salvage what we could, but the reality is there is barely enough left for one semester. Your living expenses gone, evaporated." She shrugged, a delicate lifting of her shoulders that seemed almost casual. almost pleased. The way she looked at me in that moment, I saw something I had seen before but had always explained away, a cold calculation, a complete lack of empathy. "But how?" I whispered. "It was supposed to be in safe funds. Dad was so careful. He told me exactly what it was invested in. Municipal bonds, index funds, blue-chip stocks. Nothing risky, nothing that could just disappear." Brandon snorted from his chair. "Sounds like Daddy was not as smart as he thought. Maybe you should have paid attention instead of wasting 4 years on a useless art history degree." He did not even look up from his phone. "I majored in nonprofit management," I said automatically, my voice hollow. "And I need to see the account statements. All of them. Right now." Eleanor's smile was thin and cold. "Oh, Anya, is that really necessary? Do you not trust me?" "How sad. Your father trusted me completely. He knew I would always do what was best for you." She paused, letting that sink in. "But if you insist on being difficult, by all means hire a lawyer. Of course, legal fees will consume whatever tiny amount is left, and you will end up with nothing anyway. Is that really what you want, sweetheart?" The endearment felt like a slap. I looked at Brandon, who was smirking openly now. I looked at Chloe, still taking selfies with my destroyed piano. And I looked at Eleanor, this woman my father had married, had trusted, had left in charge of my entire future. And I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. She had never loved me. She had never even liked me. I was an obligation, an inconvenience. And now I was an obstacle she had just removed. "I want to see the statements." I repeated, my voice stronger now despite the terror coursing through me. "I am legally entitled to see them. I am the beneficiary." "And you will see them," Eleanor said smoothly, "when the lawyers finish preparing all the documentation. These things take time, dear. You understand. In the meantime, perhaps you should think about your options. You are 22 years old. Most people your age are working, supporting themselves. It might be time for you to do the same instead of expecting handouts." Handouts. The word exploded out of me. "That money is mine. My father left it specifically for me. It is not a handout, it is my inheritance." "Your father left his entire estate to his wife," Eleanor said, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "That would be me. The trust fund was established from that estate at my discretion, managed by me. And I have managed it to the best of my ability during extraordinarily difficult economic times. If you wish to accuse me of mismanagement, or worse, you are welcome to try. But I promise you, Anya, you will not win that fight, and you will destroy what little relationship we have left." I stood up, my whole body shaking. I looked one more time at my mother's piano, violated and ruined, turned into a prop for a teenager's social media. I looked at Eleanor's cold, triumphant face, and I knew she had done something. I just did not know what yet. "I am going to pack my things," I said quietly. "I will be out by tonight." "That is probably for the best," Eleanor replied, already turning back to her magazine. "You can leave your key on the table." I walked out of that house, my childhood home, the place where I had last felt truly safe with my father, and I never looked back. I threw some clothes and my laptop into garbage bags, grabbed the one photo album I had of Mom, and loaded everything into my old pickup truck that Dad had bought me when I turned 16. I had $417 in my checking account. No apartment, no job lined up, no close friends I felt comfortable asking for help, because I had spent so much time taking care of Dad after Mom died, and then managing the estate after Dad passed, that I had isolated myself without realizing it. I drove aimlessly for hours that first night, crying so hard I could barely see the road. Everything I had believed about my future had just disappeared. Graduate school was impossible now. The career I had dreamed of, working in nonprofit arts education, was out of reach. I could not even afford first and last month's rent on a studio apartment. I was functionally homeless with a bachelor's degree and absolutely no safety net. But I was not ready to give up, not yet. Because something Eleanor had said had been bothering me. The way she had been so confident, so dismissive when I asked to see the statements. The way she had threatened me with legal fees. People who have nothing to hide do not threaten you. They show you the proof and let you draw your own conclusions. 3 days later, I worked up the courage to do something that probably was not entirely legal. I still had my key, and I knew Eleanor's schedule. Tuesday afternoons, she always went to her Pilates class, and Brandon would be at the office of the startup he was pretending to run. Chloe had dance practice. The house would be empty between 2 and 5 p.m. I drove back to the estate at 2:15. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door. I slipped inside, my heart pounding so loud, I was sure the neighbors could hear it. I went straight to my old room on the second floor. I had deliberately left some things behind, things I knew I would need to retrieve eventually, so I would have an excuse if anyone caught me. But that was not why I was really there. I was there because of the attic. The attic above my old room had been my secret place when I was younger. Mom and I used to hide up there during thunderstorms, playing cards and telling stories. There was a small vent that opened directly above the sitting room, the room where Eleanor conducted all her important phone calls, because she liked the afternoon light. Dad used to joke that the acoustics in that room carried sound everywhere because of the high ceilings and hardwood floors. I climbed up into the attic as quietly as I could, positioned myself near the vent, and waited. I did not have to wait long. At 2:45, I heard the front door open and close. Eleanor's heels clicking across the marble. She was on her phone already. "Yes, darling, I am back from that dreadful class. That new instructor is absolutely incompetent." Silence as she listened. Then, "No, I sent her packing. It went exactly as I planned. She was so shocked she could barely speak." More silence. Then Eleanor laughed, a sound without any warmth at all. "Brandon, really, she will never figure it out. Even if she does see the statements eventually, what is she going to find? Some unfortunate investment decisions during volatile market conditions. That is not illegal. That is just bad luck." My blood went cold. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, and started the voice recorder app. "The fund was absolutely a godsend," Eleanor continued. "My venture capital firm could not have gotten off the ground without that initial $700,000 infusion. And the timing was perfect. Everything is properly documented through the shell companies. By the time she is 28 and gets full control, if there is anything left, it will be too late to matter. Who is going to believe a bitter stepdaughter over detailed financial records prepared by professionals?" I stopped breathing. $700,000. My money, stolen. Funneled into Eleanor's business venture through shell companies. "Oh, and I need to remember to get the paperwork on that Steinway piano," Eleanor said casually. "It might be worth listing it as an asset to offset some risk. That piano has to be worth at least $50,000. Vintage Steinway grands hold their value beautifully." "What about the girl?" It was Brandon's voice now. He must have arrived while I was lost in shock. "What if she lawyers up? She is not as stupid as you keep saying." "She will not," Eleanor said confidently. "She has no money for a lawyer. And even if she did, what is she going to prove? That I made some bad investment choices with money that was legally under my control as trustee? Please. The documents are airtight. I had the best attorneys draw them up. Everything I did was technically within my rights as trustee. Aggressive, perhaps, but not illegal." "What about the authorization forms?" Brandon asked. "You know, the ones where she supposedly agreed to the high-risk investments?" Eleanor laughed again. "Those forms are filed away safely. The signatures look perfect. That calligrapher I hired was worth every penny." My hand clenched around my phone so hard I thought it might crack. She had forged my signature. That was not just civil fraud. That was criminal. Multiple felonies. And I had it all on recording. I stayed frozen in that attic for another 20 minutes, recording every word as Eleanor and Brandon discussed how they had systematically drained my trust fund, how they had covered their tracks, how Eleanor's new venture capital firm was already making money off my stolen inheritance. They talked about selling the house, eventually downsizing, pocketing the difference. They talked about how my father had been foolish to trust Eleanor completely, how he had signed over power of attorney to her during his final illness, how she had taken full advantage. When they finally left the sitting room, I waited another 30 minutes before carefully climbing down from the attic. My entire body was numb. I felt like I was moving through water. I gathered the things I had supposedly come to retrieve, left the house, locked the door, and drove away. I did not go far. I ended up in the parking lot of a Target 3 miles away, where I sat in my truck and listened to that recording 5 times, making sure it was clear, making sure every word was audible. Then I uploaded it to 3 different cloud storage services. I emailed it to myself multiple times with different subject lines. I was not going to lose this evidence. But evidence was not enough. I needed to survive long enough to use it. And that meant money. That meant work. Over the next week, I found 3 part-time jobs. Mornings I worked at a coffee shop near the University of Texas campus, making lattes for students who had the future I was supposed to have. Afternoons I tutored online through a platform that connected students with college graduates. Evenings I waitressed at a diner that stayed open until 2 a.m. Between shifts, I slept in my truck in the parking lots of Walmart and Home Depot, because they did not kick out overnight campers. I showered at the university gym using a day pass I bought every 3 days. I ate protein bars and ramen noodles I cooked on a camping stove in the truck bed. It was humiliating, it was exhausting, but it was survival. Every day I woke up, I reminded myself that Eleanor thought she had broken me. She thought I had given up and slunk away. She had no idea I was building a case. I started documenting everything. I created a timeline of every interaction I had ever had with Eleanor, every time she had dismissed me or undermined me or made me feel small. I documented every conversation about my trust fund that I could remember, every promise my father had made about my education, every detail about the fund's original structure that Dad had shared with me. I wrote it all down in a composition notebook I kept hidden under the spare tire in my truck. But documentation and a recording were not enough. I needed help, legal help, the kind I could not afford. 6 weeks into my new life as a homeless college graduate working 70 hours a week to afford food, autumn arrived in Austin with a vengeance. Texas does not get cold very often, but when it does, it hits hard. A freak ice storm swept through in early October, and I woke up one morning in my truck, shivering so violently my teeth were chattering. My phone was down to 3% battery. I had nowhere to charge it. I felt hot and cold at the same time, and I knew I was getting sick. I made it through my morning shift at the coffee shop, but I was so weak I kept dropping things. My manager sent me home. I did not have a home to go to. I drove to the Walmart parking lot and crawled into the back seat of my truck, piling every piece of clothing I owned on top of myself. For 2 days, I drifted in and out of consciousness. I had a fever so high I was hallucinating. I could not eat. I could barely drink. My phone died completely. I genuinely thought I was going to die in that parking lot alone, and no one would know until someone complained about the smell. On the 3rd day, in a moment of desperate clarity, I remembered my old roommate from college, Maya. We had not been particularly close, but she had always been kind to me. She had texted me a few times after graduation asking how I was doing, and I had brushed her off because I was too ashamed to admit what had happened. But I had nothing left to lose now. I used the last of my phone battery to charge it from my truck battery, using an adapter I kept for emergencies. When it finally powered on, I sent Maya a text. Just 2 words, help me, and my location. She was there in 45 minutes. I barely remember her helping me into her car, wrapping me in blankets, driving me to her apartment. I barely remember her forcing medicine down my throat and making me drink water and soup. I slept for almost 20 hours straight in her guest room in an actual bed with actual blankets, and when I finally woke up, I cried for an hour because I had forgotten what it felt like to be cared for. Maya did not ask questions at first. She just took care of me. But after 3 days, when my fever broke and I could finally think clearly, she sat down on the edge of the bed and said, "Anya, what happened to you? You look like you have lost 30 pounds, and you were living in your truck. What the hell is going on?" So I told her everything. The trust fund, Eleanor's betrayal, my mother's piano. Living in my truck, the recording, all of it. I showed her the composition notebook full of documentation. I played her the recording of Eleanor admitting to stealing my money. Maya listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "That evil witch is going to prison, I promise you that." "I do not have money for a lawyer," I whispered. "I do not even have money for first month's rent anywhere. I have been saving every penny for months, and I only have $2,000. "You can stay here," Maya said immediately, "for as long as you need, rent-free. You just focus on getting healthy and getting your money back." "I cannot ask you to." "You are not asking, I am telling you." Her voice was fierce. "What happened to you is wrong, it is criminal, and you are not going to fight this battle alone anymore." I stayed with Maya. I kept working my jobs, but now I could sleep in a real bed and shower every day and eat regular meals. My health improved. My thinking cleared. And I started to plan. Not just survival anymore, but justice. The universe works in strange ways sometimes. 4 weeks after Maya rescued me, I was working the evening shift at the diner. It was a Tuesday night slow, and I was wiping down tables when the door chimed. I looked up and my heart stopped. My uncle Julian, my father's younger brother. I had not seen him in almost 2 years, not since Dad's funeral. Uncle Julian lived in San Francisco, ran some kind of tech investment firm, and had always been the cool, distant relative who sent expensive birthday gifts but rarely visited. He walked in wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my truck. His salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, and he looked around the diner like he had never seen such a place before. Then his eyes landed on me, and his expression went from puzzlement to shock to fury in about 3 seconds. He crossed the diner in 6 long strides. "Anya, is that really you? What the hell are you doing here? What happened?" His voice was low and urgent. "Your stepmother told me you were at Stanford. She said everything was fine, that the trust fund was funding your graduate program." I stared at him, too shocked to respond. My manager called from the back. "Table 4 needs their check, Anya." I mechanically walked to the register, printed the check, delivered it, and when I got back, Uncle Julian was still standing there, his jaw tight with barely controlled anger. "When do you get off?" he asked. 11:30. "I will be waiting in my car. Black Mercedes sedan. We need to talk. Now." He left without ordering anything. I finished my shift in a daze. True to his word, he was waiting in the parking lot when I walked out at 11:35. He got out of the car when he saw me, and in the harsh fluorescent lights of the parking lot, I saw his face properly. He looked stricken, horrified. "Get in," he said quietly. "I am staying at the Four Seasons. We are going to talk, and you are going to tell me everything." We drove in silence to the hotel. He took me up to his suite, a sprawling corner unit with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He ordered room service without asking what I wanted, just told them to bring up everything: sandwiches, soup, dessert, coffee juice. When the food arrived, he gestured for me to eat. While he sat across from me, his hands steepled, his expression grim. "Start from the beginning," he said. "From the day Thomas died. Tell me everything." So I did. For the second time in a month, I laid out the whole story. But this time, I had more than just words. I had the recording. I had the documentation. I had bank statements showing my account balance declining. I had receipts from sleeping in Walmart parking lots. I had the medical bills from Maya taking me to urgent care when my fever spiked to 104. I showed him everything. Uncle Julian did not interrupt. He listened to the entire recording without speaking, his face growing harder and harder as Eleanor's voice filled the room. When it ended, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said very softly, "She nearly killed you. You were sleeping in your truck during an ice storm. You nearly died because she stole your money." "Yes," I whispered. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. "What do you want, Anya? Not what you think you should want. Not what is fair or reasonable. What do you actually want?" I thought about my mother's piano painted pink and covered in stickers. I thought about my father's face when he had shown me the trust fund paperwork promising me I would always be secure. I thought about sleeping in my truck, about being so sick I could barely move, about being so hungry. I dug through my couch cushions for spare change to buy a granola bar. "I want my money back," I said clearly. "All of it. Every penny she stole, and I want her to pay for what she did. I want her to lose everything the way she made me lose everything. I want justice." Uncle Julian turned around and I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. A cold, calculated determination that reminded me suddenly of my father when he was closing a business deal. "Then justice is what you will get," he said. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Roy, it is Julian. I need you on the earliest flight to Austin. Family emergency. I will fill you in when you arrive, but clear your schedule. This is going to take a few weeks." He paused. "Criminal, fraud, embezzlement, forgery, breach of fiduciary duty, multiple felonies. And Roy, we are going scorched earth on this one. Bring Graham." He hung up and looked at me. "Roy Foster is a private investigator I have worked with for 15 years. He is the best in the business. Graham Mitchell is my attorney. They will be here by morning. You are going to tell them everything you told me. Graham will build the case. Roy will find every piece of evidence we need, and I am going to make sure Eleanor West regrets the day she ever met this family. I do not have money to pay them," I said quietly. "I can barely afford. I am paying for everything." Uncle Julian cut me off. "Every penny. Consider it a loan if that makes you feel better. But honestly, Anya, this is family. This is what your father would have wanted. What he should have anticipated and protected you from. I failed you. I should have checked on you after Thomas died. I should have made sure Eleanor was not—" He stopped, visibly controlling himself. "That ends now. We are going to destroy her." Roy Foster and Graham Mitchell arrived the next morning. Roy was a weathered man in his 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Graham was younger, maybe 40, with steel-gray hair and the kind of calm, ruthless demeanor that made me think he had destroyed people in court many times before. We spent 6 hours at Uncle Julian's suite going over everything. Roy took pages of notes. Graham recorded everything on a digital voice recorder. They asked me questions I had never thought of. What was the exact date Eleanor had told me the money was gone? Had I received any official documentation? Had she ever shown me account statements before? What financial institutions had Dad used? Who were his estate attorneys? Did Dad have any business partners I could contact? By the end of the session, Graham leaned back in his chair and smiled for the first time. This is going to be easier than I thought. Eleanor made mistakes, multiple mistakes. The forged signatures are going to bury her. What is the timeline? Uncle Julian asked. Give me 48 hours to file emergency motions and freeze the trust fund assets, Graham said. Roy needs another week to trace the money and document the shell companies. Then we bring the hammer down. 2 days later, Graham filed an emergency petition with the court to freeze all assets related to my trust fund, pending investigation of potential fraud. Eleanor was served with papers at the estate while she was hosting a dinner party. According to the process server who told Roy about it later, she went white as a sheet and spilled red wine all over her cream-colored suit. Her lawyers responded immediately, threatening to sue all of us for harassment, defamation, and wrongful interference. Eleanor released a statement claiming I was mentally unstable, that I had been suffering from depression since my father's death, and that Uncle Julian was manipulating me in an attempt to get control of the estate for himself. She painted herself as a grieving widow just trying to protect her children from a bitter stepdaughter who could not accept that the money was gone. Graham responded by filing a formal criminal complaint with the district attorney's office and turning over the recording. That shut Eleanor up fast. Roy worked around the clock for the next week. He traced every dollar that had disappeared from my trust fund. He found the 3 shell companies Eleanor had set up. He found the incorporation documents for her venture capital firm, Stratosphere Venture Capital. He found bank records showing deposits into Stratosphere matching almost perfectly with withdrawals from my trust fund. He found email exchanges between Eleanor and her attorney discussing the best way to structure the transfers to appear legitimate. He even found a receipt for $1,500 paid to a professional calligrapher for documents requiring my signature. When Graham laid out all the evidence in his conference room, even I was shocked by how brazen Eleanor had been. She had not even tried very hard to hide what she was doing. She had just assumed no one would ever question her. The day we filed the full lawsuit was the day everything changed. Graham did not just sue for the return of my money. He sued for punitive damages. He sued for emotional distress. He sued for the cost of my medical treatment, my lost educational opportunities, everything. He demanded $850,000 in direct restitution, plus $500,000 in penalties. And he made it clear that if Eleanor did not settle immediately, he was going to push for criminal prosecution with every resource at his disposal. Eleanor's lawyers tried to negotiate. They offered to return whatever was left in the trust fund, maybe another $100,000. Graham told them to go to hell. They met in a conference room at Graham's law office on a Wednesday morning. Eleanor arrived with Brandon and 2 lawyers. She was impeccably dressed in a navy St. John's suit, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like she was going to a society luncheon, not a legal showdown that could send her to prison. I sat between Uncle Julian and Graham on our side of the long mahogany table. I had dressed carefully that morning in the one good suit I still owned from college interviews. I wanted to look strong. I wanted to look like I had already won. Eleanor's lead attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit, started with threats. My client has agreed to this meeting against my advice. Any settlement offer made here is contingent on Ms. Thorne signing a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement and refraining from any further legal action or public statements. We are prepared to offer $200,000 to resolve this matter completely. Graham did not even respond. He opened the first folder in front of him and slid a document across the table. Forensic audit of the trust fund. $850,000 withdrawn over 20 months, every transaction traced. Eleanor's lawyer glanced at it, his expression unchanging. Graham slid over the second folder. Incorporation documents for 3 shell companies, all signed by Eleanor West as president. Third folder. Formation documents for Stratosphere Venture Capital. Initial capital infusion matching almost exactly the amounts withdrawn from Ms. Thorne's trust fund. Fourth folder. Email exchanges between Mrs. West and her personal attorney discussing optimal structure for moving trust fund assets into private ventures. Eleanor was starting to look pale. Brandon had gone very still. Fifth folder. Graham pushed this one directly to Eleanor. And finally, analysis by Margaret Daniels, one of the nation's top handwriting experts. She examined the authorization forms you claim bear my client's signature approving high-risk investments. Dr. Daniels concludes with 100% certainty that every signature was forged. Eleanor's attorney closed the folder and whispered urgently to her. Eleanor shook her head violently. This is absurd. These documents are being taken out of context. I acted in Anya's best interests at all times. The signatures are forgeries, Graham said flatly. Criminal forgeries. You hired a calligrapher. We have the receipt. Would you like to see it? The room was absolutely silent. Eleanor's face had gone from pale to ashen. Her hands were shaking. Here are my client's terms, Graham said, sliding one final document across the table. Full restitution of $850,000 plus $500,000 in punitive damages. You will liquidate Stratosphere Venture Capital. You will sell the estate. You will turn over all personal property that belonged to Thomas Thorne or his first wife Sophia, including the Steinway piano. You will sign an agreement never to contest Anya's control of any remaining trust assets. And you will cooperate fully with the district attorney's office. You are insane, Eleanor hissed. I will not. You will, Graham said calmly. Because if you do not sign this agreement right now, I walk out of this room and hand this file directly to the DA, who is waiting for my call, and Eleanor. He leaned forward. Forgery is a felony in Texas. Embezzlement is a felony. Breach of fiduciary duty when it crosses into criminal fraud is a felony. You are looking at 18 months minimum in state prison. If you cooperate, if you make full restitution, you might get probation and a fine. If you fight this, you will do time. I promise you that. Eleanor's lawyer whispered to her again more urgently this time. She was crying now, mascara running down her face, all the polish and sophistication stripped away. I did not mean it was not supposed to. Sign the agreement, her lawyer said quietly. Sign it now. Eleanor signed with a shaking hand. So did Brandon, who had been named in the lawsuit as an accessory since he had known about the fraud. Graham collected the signed documents, made copies, and stood up. The DA will still receive the file, he said pleasantly. My client is not pursuing criminal charges, but the state of Texas does not take kindly to people violating their fiduciary duties and forging documents. You will be hearing from them. I would suggest you cooperate fully if you want any chance at avoiding prison time. Uncle Julian stood up and gestured for me to follow. We walked toward the door. Behind us, I heard Eleanor sobbing. I heard Brandon cursing. I heard her lawyers trying to calm them down. I stopped at the door and turned around. Eleanor looked up at me, her face a mess of tears and rage. I want my mother's piano restored, I said clearly. Every trace of that pink paint removed. Every sticker scraped off. Restored to exactly the condition it was in before Chloe destroyed it. And I want it done by a certified Steinway restoration specialist. I do not care what it costs. That will be tens of thousands of dollars, Eleanor shrieked. Yes, I said. I know. I walked out. Uncle Julian put his hand on my shoulder as we walked to the elevator. Neither of us spoke until we were in his car driving away from the law office. Then he started laughing, not cruel laughter, relieved laughter. You were magnificent in there, he said. Thomas would have been so proud of you. I did not feel magnificent. I felt exhausted and weirdly sad. Not for Eleanor, she had earned every consequence coming her way, but for the fact that it had come to this at all. That my father's widow had hated me so much, she had been willing to destroy me. What happens now? I asked. Now, Uncle Julian smiled. Now you get your life back. Over the next 3 months, everything moved quickly. Eleanor liquidated Stratosphere Venture Capital, which had lost money anyway, despite being built on my stolen funds. She sold the estate at a significant loss because she needed cash immediately. She turned over all of my father's personal effects, all of my mother's belongings, everything I had asked for. The Steinway piano was picked up by a restoration specialist and sent to a workshop in New York that specialized in vintage concert grands. Eleanor was charged with multiple felonies. She pled guilty to embezzlement and forgery in exchange for 18 months in a minimum security facility and 5 years probation. Brandon was charged as an accessory and received probation and community service since he had not directly participated, only known about the fraud, and failed to report it. Uncle Julian helped me find an apartment in Palo Alto near Stanford. He insisted I take an advance against my restored trust fund to pay for everything I needed. Furniture, clothes, a new laptop, all the things I had lost. He set me up with a financial advisor who could manage my money properly with full transparency and quarterly reports I could actually understand. Maya helped me move across the country. She took a week off work and drove with me from Austin to California, and we talked about everything. about trauma and healing and forgiveness and justice, about what I wanted my life to look like now. Are you going to forgive her? Maya asked as we drove through New Mexico, the desert stretching endlessly on both sides of the highway. No, I said. I do not think so. I do not hate her anymore. I just do not care about her anymore. She is paying for what she did. That is enough. I do not need to forgive her to move on. That is healthy, Maya said. You do not owe her anything, not forgiveness, not understanding, nothing. I started at Stanford that fall. I was accepted into the nonprofit management graduate program with a full scholarship, which I did not even need anymore, but accepted anyway because it felt good to earn something on my own merit. I bought a digital piano for my apartment and started playing again, working through all the pieces my mother had taught me. Chopin, Debussy, Rachmaninoff. I started seeing a therapist twice a week to work through everything that had happened. The trauma of losing my father, the betrayal by Eleanor, the months of homelessness, the near-death experience in that ice storm. It was hard work facing all of that pain, but necessary. Uncle Julian visited once a month. We were building a relationship I had never had with him before, and I was learning that he was nothing like my father in some ways, but very much like him in others. Loyal, protective, fiercely committed to family. A year after everything ended on a Saturday afternoon, I got a call from the Steinway restoration specialist. Miss Thorne, your piano is ready. I have to say, in 30 years of restoration work, I have never seen such deliberate vandalism to an instrument this valuable. But I am happy to report she is perfect now. Better than perfect. We replaced the strings, regulated the action, refinished the case to the original ebony. She plays like she did the day she left the factory. Thank you, I said, my voice breaking. Thank you so much. The piano was delivered 2 weeks later. They had to hire a specialized moving company that dealt exclusively with concert grands. When they wheeled it into the music room at the nonprofit center, where I was now volunteering teaching music to underprivileged kids, I cried. It was beautiful, perfect. Gleaming ebony black, not a trace of pink anywhere. I sat down at the bench and played the first piece my mother had ever taught me. A simple Chopin prelude. My fingers were rusty, but the piano responded beautifully, the sound rich and warm and familiar. It felt like my mother was there with me, her hands guiding mine. 3 years after everything began, I stood on a stage at the Four Seasons Hotel in San Francisco in front of 300 people. I was wearing a navy dress, my hair done professionally, actually wearing makeup for once. Behind me was a massive banner reading, "The Sophia Thorne Foundation Building Futures Restoring Hope." Uncle Julian was in the front row, beaming with pride. Maya was there with her girlfriend. Graham and Roy had flown in for the event. And in the corner, partially visible, was my mother's Steinway piano, which had become the centerpiece of the Foundation's music education program. I stepped up to the microphone. Thank you all for being here tonight. 3 years ago, I was sleeping in my truck in a Walmart parking lot. I was sick, I was scared, and I genuinely believed my life was over. My stepmother had stolen nearly $1 million of my inheritance, and I had no way to fight back. I was completely alone. I paused, looking out at the audience, but I was not alone. I just did not know it yet, because when I finally asked for help, people answered. My friend Maya literally saved my life. My Uncle Julian fought for me when I did not have the strength to fight for myself. And together, we did not just get justice. We built something better. I gestured to the screens behind me, which showed photos of the Foundation's work. The Sophia Thorne Foundation exists because of that $500,000 in punitive damages Eleanor was ordered to pay. We took that money that came from someone trying to destroy me, and we built something that helps others who are going through what I went through. We provide emergency housing for students facing homelessness due to family crisis. We offer legal assistance for young adults navigating trust funds and inheritance disputes. We fund mental health counseling, and we provide music education scholarships because my mother believed music could heal anything. The audience applauded. I waited for quiet. In the past 3 years, we have helped 147 young people. We have kept them in school. We have kept them safe. We have helped them understand that one person's cruelty does not define their future, and we are just getting started. More applause. I smiled. Resilience is not just about surviving what gets thrown at you. It is about knowing you deserve to be saved. And then it is about turning around and building a shelter for the next person. The applause this time was thunderous. People stood. I saw Uncle Julian wiping his eyes. I saw Maya cheering. And I felt for the first time since my father died completely at peace. After the gala, after all the handshakes and photographs and thank yous, I sat alone at that Steinway piano in the empty ballroom. I played the same Chopin prelude I had played the day the piano was delivered, and I thought about everything I had lost and everything I had gained. I was 28 years old, the age when I would have originally gained full control of my trust fund if everything had gone according to plan. Instead, I had been through hell and come out the other side. I had built something meaningful. I had helped people. I had honored my mother's memory and my father's intentions in a way that went far beyond what any dollar amount could achieve. Eleanor was out of prison on parole, now working as a receptionist somewhere in Nevada, bankrupt and alone. Brandon was selling insurance. Chloe had cut contact with both of them and was attending community college, trying to build a life separate from the mess her parents had created. I did not think about them much anymore. They were just people who had once caused me pain, and I had moved past that pain. I finished the prelude and stood up. Tomorrow I had meetings with 3 more young people who needed help, who needed to know they were not alone. I had a life full of purpose and meaning. I had people who loved me. I had my mother's piano restored and beautiful. I had justice. I had peace. And I had a future that was entirely my own. I was my mother's daughter, my father's child. But most importantly, I was myself. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. So let me ask you something now. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever been told your pain does not matter, that you should just accept unfair treatment because fighting back is too hard? Have you ever felt so alone you thought you might not survive? If you have, I need you to know something. You deserve better. You deserve justice. You deserve to be saved. And you have more strength inside you than you know. It took me sleeping in my truck and nearly dying before I finally fought back. Do not wait that long. Speak up sooner. Ask for help sooner. And know that your story does not end with someone else's cruelty. It ends with your resilience. If this story meant something to you, please hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe because I will keep sharing stories about real people who refuse to stay victims. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours? What would you have done in my situation? I read every single comment, and your stories matter. Remember, you are not alone, and you are stronger than you think.